Despite numerous big titles being delayed, it's actually incredible how many good games have already been released this year. Of course, there have been plenty of terrible releases as well, ranging from the annoying to the downright broken. Let's take a look at the 15 worst games of the year so far. BALAN WONDERWORLD. Sonic the Hedgehog programmer Yuji Naka made his return to the spotlight with BALAN WONDERWORLD, a janky 3D platformer with an incomprehensible story, puzzling design decisions, shoddy visuals, and the list really goes on. Who is BALAN? Why are the protagonists trying to save people whose hearts are filled with darkness or something? What is the deal with the Tims? Why is an elaborate dance number at the end of every boss fight? BALAN WONDERWORLD inspires many questions with very little answers, and that's the least of your worries. Marvel's Avengers Operation Hawkeye. At first glance, Operation Hawkeye may not seem as bad as many of the titles on this list, but considering that this is essentially DLC that's meant to revitalize a game for its launch on its current-gen consoles, it may as well not exist. On top of a new bland environment that's mind-numbingly boring to explore, the new missions and story content aren't worth the trouble. Even if you do care about the story, there's little substance to be had. Marvel's Avengers may just be a meme at this point, but there was a genuine hope that Operation Hawkeye could inspire some kind of revival. Alas. Werewolf, the Apocalypse, EARTHBLOOD. The World of Darkness setting offers some very interesting lore, though it hasn't always translated to the best video games. Case in point, Werewolf, the Apocalypse, EARTHBLOOD, which tries to focus on the werewolf or Garou side. Tries is the key word since the narrative does nothing to present any of the Garou's unique aspects or provide any kind of choice or consequence. Combat is a clunky mess. Call is boring, and there's very little to sustain interest. Evil Inside. PT is more than 6 years old at this point, but there are still several developers trying to copy its brand of psychological horror. Evil Inside is only one example, but it's also one of the worst. At around 45 minutes, it's definitely longer than PT, but also little more than a hollow clone with bad voice acting, a dull story, and lame jump scares. It's $13, but for less than that, you get better scares from Terraria and infinitely more fun gameplay. BIOMUTANT. The criticism of BIOMUTANT having way too many mechanics and genres mixed together has been repeated time and time again. But you'd still be left with a bland and boring narrative, meaningless morality choices, a tedious structure, and forgettable characters otherwise. While there have been fixes and someone will doubtlessly find something to enjoy about it, BIOMUTANT's various elements just didn't provide us with an enjoyable experience. WARHAMMER Age of Sigmar Stormground. The Age of Sigmar's setting has the potential for some cool adventures, especially in the RPG realm. But Stormground doesn't quite work due to the overtly annoying roguelike mechanics, the sheer boredom of experiencing the same content again and again, or lack of essential features like indicators for which unit has a turn available. Then there are the multitude of bugs and terrible balancing, which ensures even online play is a mess. Taxi Chaos. One day, someone decided there wasn't enough crazy taxi in the world and sought to rectify this mistake. Which is all well and good, but Taxi Chaos isn't it. Not only does it not offer its own unique spin on the formula, but it can't even properly emulate the style of the original. Bugs, repetitive gameplay, very little by the way of actual content. The list of faults goes on longer than the actual game, which may be a good thing. Of Bird and Cage. Billed as a metal album that unfolds over a 2-hour game, Of Bird and Cage does have some interesting musical talent aboard. The main hook is that the duration of each song determines how much time you get to explore various sections. It sounds cool in theory, but means you'll never relax enough to enjoy either the gameplay or music. Even if you do get into it, there's terrible combat, hilariously bad driving sections, and awkward voice acting. Despite trying to deliver an emotionally dark journey, A Birding Cage neither works as a game or as an enjoyable album. Demon Skin. Demon Skin looks intriguing if a little rough. It's a 2D platforming Souls-like, one that unabashedly proclaims itself so. There's a stamina bar and dying just like Dark Souls. Unfortunately, terrible combat mechanics, like having to change stances to block enemy attacks, hamper the experience while the story is throwaway as can be. One might get a kick out of the visuals, but whether it's as a 2D side-scroller or Souls-like, Demon Skin fails and then keeps failing long after you've stopped caring. REDOUT Space Assault. As a futuristic racer channeling Wipeout and F-Zero, REDOUT is a great experience and well worth getting into. So why in the world would the developer veer into space shooter territory of all things? REDOUT Space Assault could have been an intriguing experiment, but it's soured by poor performance, mission design, and bizarre controls. Even worse is that it's a mostly on-rails shooter with no real freedom to explore and auto-shooting, which takes out any glimpse of a challenge. Buildings have feelings too. Instead of a city of people, what if the buildings themselves had their own desires and wishes to manage? Buildings Have Feelings 2 attempts to tackle this with themes of development and change governing its plot. Despite the interesting aesthetic though, the controls are awful, the music is awful, and there's a lot of bugs. It also doesn't help that very little is explained gameplay-wise, turning what could have been a fun puzzle-like city builder into a mess. Stubbs the Zombie in Rebel Without a Pulse. On other platforms, Stubbs can range from decent on the PC to awful on the PS4. The Switch version is at an even lower point since the outdated visuals look all the more horrible here. The gameplay is also repetitive despite some interesting hooks, and there's nothing by the way of improvements or new content. While you could probably do far worse than re-releasing Stubbs for modern-day platforms, you could also do a heck of a lot better. Apex Legends on the Switch. Okay, though highly anticipated, many wondered how Apex Legends would fare on the Switch, especially since competitive shooters like Overwatch had their fair share of issues. The answer is poorly, with blurry textures, awful draw distances, and other sacrifices in the name of 30 frames per second. It's not even the best solution for current players due to the lack of cross progression, but hey, at least cross-platform support lets you get dominated by those on far better platforms. I Saw Black Clouds. A psychological thriller with branching storylines and live-action footage, I Saw Black Clouds is definitely going for something different, but it's also very shoddy. With the sheer amount of choices and paths is interesting, everything from the acting to the direction and pacing is kind of embarrassing to watch. Maybe you'll get a kick out of its low-budget shenanigans, but you can only ironically appreciate it for so long. PIXELJUNK Raiders. Don't let the name fool you, though it is from the same developer as PIXELJUNK Shooter and PIXELJUNK Eden. PIXELJUNK Raiders is significantly less enjoyable. The aesthetic is cool, but that's quickly forgotten as you traipse around the surface, completing uninspired missions and scavenging resources, before dying and losing it all. As a Stadia exclusive, it has some interesting mechanics, like sharing stages with other players via state share, but it's buried under an unnecessarily punishing design and repetitive gameplay.
And with that, we reached the end of the video. Have anything to say? Let us know in the comments below. Also, we upload new videos every single day on Gaming Bolt, so please consider subscribing as it really helps us out. Thanks for watching.